Hi, it's Jordan1, and today I'll be showing you how to make this adorable Loomigurumi seal. So the white one here is the first one that I had done, and I think he has a really sweet little face. And then for the tutorial I decided I would make it a different color, so I have this nice light gray color, and I think that he turned out really cute as well. To make the seal, you're going to need a hook of some sort, and I have a rainbow loom metal hook, but you can use whatever you have available. You're going to need several C-clips, some kind of stuffing. I have polyfil, and I'm going to be using a twist tie to get my magic ring started, but that's optional. You'll need eyes of some sort, and I'm using what I think are 6mm black beads. Or if you don't have beads, you can use buttons, or you can just use rubber bands. And then you'll need 7 black bands and about 570 of your main color, whatever you want for your seal. So you can do white or gray or whatever you think would look good. I'm going to begin by making the seal's flippers, and you're going to need 4 of these. So I'm going to show you how to do the first one, and then you can just repeat that 3 more times on your own. So I have my 5 rubber bands. I'm going to make a magic ring of 4, plus you need 1 for the center. And then I have my twist tie, which I use to help me get started, but this is optional. So if you are using a twist tie, just put it alongside of your hook. Then you want to take 1 rubber band and you want to triple this on your hook. So I'm just placing it on, twisting, and then looping it back on, twisting, and getting it back on again. So you should have 3 loops on your hook, and if you have that twist tie, just pull it up and bend it in half. And that's just going to help keep those 3 loops together and also give you something to grab onto. So I'm taking my first band, pulling it through those 3 loops back on my hook, one through the other. And then I'm just going to pull these through one at a time. So here's my second one, getting the other side back on, so you have the 3 loops, and then the one on the end will pull through the other 2. Go back through, I'm always going front to back, pull through my next one, back on my hook with the 3 loops, one pulls through the others, and then I have 1 more here, same thing. And now I can take my twist tie out, and I'm going to use a clip for a stitch marker. I have an S clip, but you can use whatever you have available. Take my hook out, and now I'm just going to take a second and try and even this out. It's not going to be very full since we have a magic ring of only 4, but just try and get them sort of evened out around that circle. In row 2, I'm following a pattern of 2, 1, 2, 1. So here is my magic ring. I'm going to go to that first stitch over to the left here, and the stitch is the sideways V. I'm going to go under both loops. Again, I'm always pushing from front to back, and I'm doing 2 single crochet into that first stitch. So I'm pulling through my first one, back on, and then the end one pulls through the other 2. Back through that same stitch for a second one, and then I'm moving over to my next stitch, and this time I only have 1, and then in that next stitch I have 2. So you may notice that your stitches are a little bit farther apart since we only had a magic ring of 4. And then in the last one here, it's just 1 single crochet, and then I'm just going to move my stitch marker here. For rows 3, 4, and 5, we're going to be doing just 1 single crochet in each one of the stitches, so I have 6 in each of my piles here. And I'll do the first one with you and let you do the other 2 on your own. So here's what we have so far. We want to go over to the next stitch and just make sure that you are going over to that very next stitch and not going in the same one, since they are kind of spread out a little bit. It always helps if you look to the side here to see if you've gone through that stitch or not. So even though it's sort of pulled over to the right here, I can see that I do have a band that went through this stitch here. So I'm going to this next one over, and again make sure you're going under both of those loops there. So I'm just going to pull through my first one, do that single crochet, and then onto the next stitch. So this is 2, and then move over for the third. That's 4, 5, and then your very last one should always be under where your stitch marker is. So that's my 6th one here. And then I just want to move my clip. So I'm just going to repeat that 2 more times to do 2 more rows. So you can pause your video here and do that now. So once you've completed that 5th row, you're done your first flipper. And so you just want to repeat this pattern 3 more times. So I will add the time to go back to if you feel like you need to follow along again. So I've now finished my 4 flippers, and so I'm just going to set those aside and then we'll start to work on the main body. I'm going to start out by making the nose. So I have 4 black bands. I'm going to do a magic ring of 3, and I have my twist tie again. So I'm going to triple that first band on my hook. So just put it on, twist, put it back on until you have the 3 loops. And again, I'm just going to pull this up and bend it in half. And then I have 3 more bands that are going to pull through. So here's my first one, 2, and then once more. And then I can remove that twist tie, and then I'll add my clip here. And then again, you want to try and even this out. I know with only 3 in the magic ring it gets very small, so the bands will have to stretch quite a bit to make it even. In row 2, you're going to need 6 rubber bands, and we're doing 2 single crochet in each, and from now on you're going to be doing your main color of your body. So as I said, with only having a magic ring of 3, the bands are pretty spread apart, so it's going to be a longer stretch for you to go over to your stitch here. So I'm stretching over and I'm going under the 2 loops there. I'm going to pull through my first one, and since I am changing colors, I'm going to go through all that are on my hook, all the black ones. Get the other end back on, so this time you only have 2, and 1 pulls through the other. So that's what's known as a slip stitch. And I'm going back under those same 2 bands, that same stitch, and I'll pull through my second one, and now it's just regular. And then I'll move over to the next one here. Again, it's pretty closed off because we're stretching it so tight, so it might be a little more difficult to see. If you spread this apart and open this up, it's a little bit easier to see your stitch. So now I'm going to pull 2 bands through here, so that's 1, 2, and then finally where my clip is my last stitch, and I have 2 left here. So there's 1, and then under again for the second. And then I'll just move my clip here. In row 3, you need 9 rubber bands, and we're still going to be doing an increase, but it's just every other. So it's a pattern of 2, 1, 2, 1, and so on. And so here's what we're forming, and you can see here, this part may be slightly confusing. Anytime you do a slip stitch, it looks like you have an extra stitch. Usually it looks smaller, like a little half stitch. This one doesn't really look that small to me, but you're ignoring this first one where we changed colors because that's not a true stitch. It sort of is up and down more than around. You're just ignoring that and you're going to this next stitch, and we're starting with 2 single crochet. So there's 1, and back through that same one for a second. And then I'll just work my way around here. So there was 1 in that one, 2 for the next. And then 1. Let me just slide these over here. So we should have 2 stitches left. 2 are going into this one I'm working on now. And then in that very last one, you should have just 1 left. So you should see your little nose section gradually increasing here. In row 4, you're going to need 9 bands as well, and it's going to be just 1 single crochet in each. So this row should be pretty straightforward. So we're just kind of evening out this little nose section. And then after this row, we're going to start to form that facial pattern, or that head pattern. So I have 2 left here. Here's my last one. For row 5, we're going to be doing a pattern of 2, 1, 1 repeating. So you're going to need 12 rubber bands. So again, we're just going to be gradually increasing here a little bit, which is pretty much typical. So I'm doing 2 in that first stitch, and then 1 in each of the next 2. And then just keep repeating that pattern. So I have 2. So basically so far our patterns have been pretty even. When we're doing increases, it's pretty much the same repetitive pattern. But as we continue on, you're going to see that the patterns are not going to be the same, just because we want it to form a certain way. We want the head to be taller, where the underneath part of, say, like the chin, we want to be pretty much flat. So you'll see that my counts are going to reflect that. In row 6, you're going to need 15 rubber bands, and this is where we're going to build up the head section. So you can see the pattern's a little bit different. we're going to do 2 into the first 3 stitches and then 1 into the last 9 stitches. So here's our little nose section. Just going over to that next stitch, and as I said, we're going to start with 2. And then 2 in the next. And then again in the next stitch we have 2. This will be our last one of 2, because this is going to be, as I said, the head, or the next row is actually where the eyes are going to go. So you can see when you do that, it spreads these out. It's going to start to form our face. And then in the next several, all the way to the end, we're just doing the 1 in each, because we want it to be basically flat under the chin section. I guess I'm calling it a chin. I don't know if seals actually have chins or not. So it took me quite a bit of figuring out to try and get this to form the shape that I wanted it to. And then you'll see when we get to the next section, there's a lot of increasing and decreasing to try to get that slant on the neck. Whoops, just lost it there. So it is easy to have this slip off of your hook, so it's pretty easy to get back on though. It's not like the whole thing's going to just come apart if it slides off your hook. So that last one is going where the clip is. In row 7, you're going to need a total of 18 rubber bands, and you can see that we are going to add the eyes here. So for my eyes, I have beads, little black beads, and I believe they are 6 millimeters. But if you don't have beads, you can just use a black rubber band that you quadruple and just slide it onto one of your body color bands. So for a pattern, we're following 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 to start, because we do want to still increase that head or facial part. And then for the last 10 stitches, you're going to do 1 single crochet in each. So I'm starting with the 2 in the first stitch. So that's 1 and then a second one. And now in this next stitch is where we're going to add our first eye. So I have used a twisty tie to get this rubber band to go through the bead. It's actually a pretty small opening, but a twist tie works very well. So you're just pulling the one end through, getting the other end on, and pulling it through the other 2 bands on your hook, just like you do a regular single crochet. And then in this next stitch, I have my 2 bands. So there's 1 and a second. And then in this next one, here's where I'm putting my next eye. And then I have 2 in this next stitch. This will be our last increase for this row. And then the rest, you're just going to follow it out here with 1 in each. When I did my first seal, I wasn't quite sure where I wanted the eyes to be when I was making it, so I actually didn't add the eyes until the very end, or at least till I had the head formed, and then I just attached them later. So I think they do stick out just a little bit more. I do like to add them while you're forming it, because then the eyes are more set into your head. but sometimes it's difficult to determine where to add them because you're just not sure how it's going to all work out once you have the whole head formed. So I have 2 left here. Whoops, lost them again there. I think I have butterfingers here today. Here's my last one. In rows 8 and 9, you're going to need 18 bands for each of the rows, and it's just going to be 1 single crochet in each stitch. So I am going to just let you do those on your own since it's pretty straightforward. So you can pause your video and do that now. For row 10, we're going to start to do some decreasing. So we had a stitch count of 18 in the last row, and we're going to reduce that down to 15. So you need 15 bands. And I have my decreases spaced out because I want the decrease to be around the top and the side of the head, and then the bottom is going to be basically flat again. So I have a clip where we're going to do a decrease, and that's a decrease is 2 stitches that are together. So we're starting out with 1 single crochet and a decrease, then 2 single crochets, a decrease, and then we have a whole bunch of single crochets. There are 7 to be exact, and then we have another decrease and then 2 more single crochets. So we're starting out with our 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and then for the decrease it's the 2 stitches together. Now I always used to go under both loops of each one of the stitches, but I always felt like you could really tell where the decrease was, so I started to just do a decrease in the outer stitch. So here's our next stitch. You can see we have the 2 loops. I'm just going to go through this outer one. So in between the middle here of this V, I'm going to stick my hook and then just push through that outside one. I'm going to pull back, and then I'm going to do the same thing in the next stitch, just that outer one. So you're only picking up 2 more bands on your hook. Taking my next rubber band, it's going to pull through these 2. You sort of have to work it around there and get it so it's basically about in the middle. Get the other end back on your hook, and then the one pulls through the other 2. So that was our first decrease. Now we're going to do 2 more single crochets. Just make sure that you are not going under this same stitch since it's a little spread out, that you're moving over to your next stitch. Again, if you look to the side here, you can usually get a better view. So you can see we already have a band through this one, so it's this next one. So there's 1. Moving to the next, we have our next single crochet, and then we're on to our next decrease. So you can see that first decrease was right at the top of the head in the middle. This next one's going to be over to the side. So I'm just pushing through that outer band, pull back, and go through that next outer band. Pulling through. It is a little bit difficult to get it through. You might have to use your fingers. Get the other end and one through the other. So next comes our 7 single crochets. So there's 1, 2, and if you hear any noises in the background, it's just our air conditioner kicking on and off. It's rather hot today. So this is our 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and then 1 more, And now let me slide these over. We're onto a decrease. So you can see we've worked our way around and we're coming to the other side of the head. So again, just those outer loops. Doing that decrease. Just pulling it through those first two. And then I have two left here. And then that last one where my clip is. So you can see it's narrowed a little bit. We have our peak of the head here, the top. I think he's turning out really cute. In row 11, you're going to need 15 rubber bands, and this is the part I was talking about where we're going to be doing some increases and decreases on the same row because we want to form that angle of the neck. So it's going to start out with a decrease, and you're going to do one, a decrease, one. Then you'll do an increase, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, then a decrease, and 1. So you're not losing any stitches because we have 3 decreases and 3 increases. It's just going to change that shape. So our first one's a decrease. So just through those outer 2 loops. And then we have 1 single crochet. We're still decreasing the top or the head part, and then we're increasing the neck part. Our next 2 are together. And then a single. And now since we're coming down towards the neck, we're going to start to do some increasing. So we have 2 in the next stitch. And we're doing every other because if you did them right next to each other, it would really flare out. We don't want that. We want it to be nice and smooth. So our next one here is just 1. And then we're increasing. So I have 2. And then 1. And here's our last increase. So I have 2. And then 1. And now these next 2 are together. Since we're coming up along the side of the head, we're doing a decrease. Whoops, lost it there. I think getting through that second one is always a little bit trickier than the first. And then in our last stitch here where our clip is, we have just 1. So now you can see how the head is coming down, but now our neck is also lengthening. In row 12, you'll need 15 bands. It's 1 single crochet in each. So I'm just going to let you do that one on your own. You can pause the video here and do that. In row 13, you're going to need 15 rubber bands. And again, we're doing a series of decreases and increases. So we're going to start out with 1, then a decrease, 1, then an increase, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and then we're doing our decrease, 1, and decrease. So the decreases are going to be around the top or the head area, the top of the neck, and then the increases are going to be along the bottom of the neck. So we're starting with 1 single crochet, and then the next 2 stitches go together for a decrease. and then another single, and here we're going to start to increase, so I have 2 in the next stitch, and then 1 for the next, and then we're doing another increase, and then a single, and then our last increase for this row, we have a single, and then the next 2 are together. So we're coming up around the side here, getting our way around to the top of the head. We have a single, and then the last 2 stitches go together, and I'll move my clip. And sometimes when you put the stitches together, you have to just take a second and sort of even those out, get them nice and smooth. Row 14 requires 15 bands and it's just 1 single crochet in each, so you can pause your video and do that now. The next thing that I'm going to do before I build the body any further is to add the whiskers. So I'm just going to take my seal and I'm going to take my hook and push it through one side and straight out the other right behind the nose. And I have 3 black bands here that I've just snipped one side of. And I want them to be fairly even with one another. I'm going to just do them all at once. And this one looks like it wants to go the opposite direction. So I'm just going to grab these on my hook. I'm going to leave one side of each band in my hook. And then I'll just pull through and just kind of even these out. So you can play around with it until you get them pretty even with one another, and you want them all going pretty much in the same direction, although I guess they can really go any way you want. And now I'm going to add some stuffing here before I continue on. So I'm just going to take some smaller sections and push them forward, get them pushed up into the nose section here. So you want to make it pretty nice and filled out, but you don't want to put too much so that the stuffing is showing in between the stitches. For row 15, you need 15 rubber bands, and we're still working that increase-decrease pattern. This is our last row of doing this. So the first 2 are going to go together, then a single, then you have an increase, 1, increase 1, increase 1, and then you're ending with a decrease 1, decrease 1. So hopefully everybody's pretty familiar with the increases and decreases by this point. So my first 2 are going together, and you can see that I've left a little bit of room here with my stuffing. I left a little bit of space just because I don't want all this fluff to be going into my stitches here, although some of it always wants to work its way in there. It's very tricky. And then the next one is a single. And now we're starting our increases. So there's 2. And then 1. I feel like I'm already sort of struggling to keep it under the camera here. And then I have 2 more in this one. And then 1 for the next. And then this is my last increase for this row. Then a single. And let me just move these up. Now we're going to start our decrease on this next one. And then a single. And then a decrease for the next 2. And then you should have 1 left where your clip is. That's the last single. In row 16, you need 15 bands. We're doing 1 single crochet in each, and I am going to attach the flippers on this row. So I'm going to start out doing 3 single crochet, 1 in each, and then I'm going to start to attach my first flipper. So here's 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to go under the 4th stitch, and then I'm going to take my first flipper. Now I don't have any stuffing in here, and I'm not going to put any. You could if you wanted to, but it's such a small space and it holds up pretty well on its own without anything inside, so I don't think it's necessary. But what I'm going to do is take where my loose band is, where this clip is, and I'm going to get that on my hook, and I can take this clip off, and then I'm going to go around to the next stitch to the left and go under that. So now I have the 3 flipper bands on my hook plus the 2 bands from the stitch and then the one at the base. So I'm going to take my next band here, I'm going to pull through all 3 of the flipper bands and then through the 2 from the stitch, get the other end back on, so I have the 3 loops, and 1 is going to pull through the other 2. And now I'm going to turn this. I know it's a little bit closed off because it's only a stitch count of 6, so it's pretty small. I'm going to just pull this and open it up so you can see it a little bit better. You want to make sure that the circle or the opening is facing up because we're just attaching the underside of the flipper. So I'm going into my next stitch, which would be my 5th stitch in this row, and I'm going to go under this band here. This was the loose band that we had just connected. I'm going under that one. So now I have my 2 stitches plus my one at the base here. My next band is going to pull through the 2 stitches, so 4 loops there, back on, 1 through the other 2, and then I'm moving over to my next stitch, which would be the sixth stitch in this row, and again I'm going over to the next stitch on the flipper, and I'm going to pull through this band under the 2 stitches back on and just that regular single crochet. So now if you look here, we've attached 3 out of the 6 stitches from the flipper, and when we do our next row we're going to attach the other 3. So I'm going to my next stitch, which will be the 7th stitch, and we're going to attach the second flipper. So we're going to be doing it the same way. So I'm taking my loose band where the clip is, getting that on my hook, and then I can take off my clip. Going to the next stitch around here to the left. So now I have the 3 flipper bands on the end of my hook, pulling through all 3 of those underneath that stitch, and then connect that. Now again, turn this so that the opening, and again you can spread this apart if you need to get a better visual, and we're going under the next stitch, which is going to be your 8th one. And again, it's this loose loop. You want to make sure you're going under the right one there, because if you would go to this next one, it's not really a disaster, but you're just going to lose a stitch. So you're going under that, what was that loose loop, pull through the 2 stitches and connect, and now you're going to the next stitch, and again the next one on your flipper there, pulling under both of the stitches. So now you can see we've connected this one just to the 3. So here's what it should look like. And now we're just going to continue on with this row just like regular, 1 in each. So I know attaching arms and legs can be very tricky and really just a really big pain. So that's why I started to attach my limbs this way. I thought it was so much easier. I actually started when I made my dachshund, which I haven't actually filmed the tutorial for yet, but that's my first one when I was designing that I did it on, and I was so happy with the way that it turned out. So I actually did do a tutorial on attaching legs just to show that method. So here's our last one, and I can move my clip. In row 17, you need 15 rubber bands. It's going to be 1 single crochet in each, and we are going to attach the other half of our flipper. So you're going to start out with 2 single crochet, 1 in each of the first 2 stitches. So that's 1, and then in that second stitch we're doing 1. And now in these next 3 we're going to pick up the other 3 stitches of the first flipper. So I'm going under that next stitch, and then again, as I said, you can spread this out and see what the next one is you need to go in. And I'm going under that stitch, and I'm going to pull through the 2 stitches, and then I'm going to my next stitch over on the body, and then the next stitch over on the flipper, pulling through my next one, and then the next one on the body. And this is really tight because it's all the way against here now. You might have to stretch it out a little bit. Go under the last one on the flipper. And now in the next one over here, we're going to go through the body stitch and then the flipper stitch. Same thing in the next one. Just make sure you're getting under all 4 loops. And then one more here. And now it's smooth sailing for the rest here, just 1 in each. So hopefully everybody was able to get those flippers attached relatively easily. So here's my last two. In row 18, you're going to need 18 rubber bands, and we're doing just a little bit of increasing around the bottom because I want the seal's belly to be a little bit bigger. So I'm starting out with 2 single crochets, and then we're doing an increase, a single, an increase, a single, and then another increase, and then the rest of the row is just 1 in each. So let me just move this up a little bit. I feel like I'm running out of room here to fit my seal underneath. So in this first one here, we're doing just 1, and then 1 for the next one, and then in this next one we're doing 2. And now where your stitches are where we attach the flippers might be a little bit smaller or bigger because they are being pulled a little bit more. I think they look a little bit smaller. So I'm just going under here, pulling through that first one, and then I have to go back under that same stitch for my second. And then 1 for the next, and then in the next one here it's like in between the flippers we want 2, and then 1 for the next, and then here's our last increase in the next stitch. You can see my bands already got messed up, so let me just move them out of the way because from this point on we have just 1 in each. Looks like I'm bending it a little bit out of shape here, trying to squeeze it underneath the camera, but we can fix that then. And then here's my last one. Get it back on my hook there. In rows 19 through 28, you're going to need 18 rubber bands in each of the rows. So it's just 1 single crochet into each of the stitches. So I'm going to let you do that on your own. And when you're finished, you can tune back in and I'll show you what to do next. You should now have a major portion of the seal done. We're almost getting to the end here. And what I'm going to do before I add the next row is to stuff the body. So again, I'm just going to add some smaller sections here. In row 29, we're going to be doing some decreases. So you'll need 14 rubber bands. So you can see we're doing 3 singles, and then we're going to do a decrease every other, and then the last 4 are singles. So you just want to make sure that you're pushing your stuffing back so it's not getting in the way of your stitches. So I'm doing the first 3 regular. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then the next 2 are together. Again, I'm just going in those outer loops, same as we did before. And now we have 1, and then a decrease. And then we have 1, and I can see this is getting messed up, but our next one is a decrease. And then a single. And then we have our last decrease. And then we have 4 singles here to complete the row. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then the last one here. Row 30 is our last row before we're going to attach the back flippers. So for this you're going to need 12 rubber bands, and we're just doing a little bit more decreasing. So I have 3 singles, a decrease, single, decrease, and then the last 6 are singles. So I'll start out here with my 3 singles. It's 1, 2, 3, and then the next 2 go together. And again, just keep pushing that fluff down. Next we have a single, and then together. And then the last 6 here are all singles. So here's 1, oops, just lost it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now here's your last chance to add any more stuffing that you think you might need. because once we're done this part we're going to add the flippers, so it's going to be closed off. The last thing that we need to do is to attach the back flippers. So I have about 10 rubber bands I'm going to use, and the best way that I found is to close off the body first and then attach the flippers. Otherwise you're dealing with the open ends of the flippers and the open end of the body, and I think it's much more difficult to work with. So if you turn your seal over right in between the two front flippers, if you follow that to the back, that's about the midsection. So you just want to squeeze that so that the stitches line up, and then I'm just going to go from the end here, go under the 2 stitches on the end, take a rubber band, pull it through, and get it back on my hook, and then one end will slide through the other, and then I'm just going to move to that next stitch over. Try not to get too much fluff in your stitch there. Line those up, pull through, back on, and then one end will pull through the other 2. And now in this next stitch I'm going to incorporate my loose band here. So let me just get this on my hook first, and then I'll go through this next stitch and straight across, pull through, and then in the next one over here you're actually going under that loose loop that we just attached as a stitch. And moving over here, of course the more closed off it gets, the harder it's going to be to see what you're doing. And then here's my last one. So now we've just closed off the end of the body here, and now I'm just going to tilt this, and I'm going to go underneath that last stitch that we just made here from closing it off, and I'll take my flipper and I'm going to pinch this flat so I can see how the stitches line up with one another. So I'm going to go up through. I know this clip is kind of in the way here. And take another band to pull through the flipper and the stitch itself. Get the other end on and pull through. Sorry if it's a bad camera angle here. I'm trying to keep it down underneath here. I'll go to that next stitch, and here I'm going to go through the flipper stitch, and I also need to grab this loose band. Take this clip off and go through the upper one here as well. And I'm going to pull through the flipper. It gets pretty jumbled up here. And the stitch. So let me see if I like that. I think that's looking pretty good. And now I still have to attach the second flipper. So I think I'm going to have more stitches than I need. So let me just go through the next stitch and just do a single crochet, and then I think I'll add the flipper next. So again, just pinch this closed and see how it all lines up. I'm going to go under the flipper here. And if you're not getting the bands exactly through the right stitches, it doesn't really matter. It's there's definitely some room for error here. And now towards the end, and again I need to get this loose band attached, and I need a couple more gray here. So let me pull this through. So I think that looks pretty good. Now I just have to tie this off. So let me go under a little part of the body here. And I'll pull through all, make a nice tight slip knot. And then I just need to hide this loop here. So I'll just go through some of the bands on the body and pull that inside. And you can adjust these flippers as you think they need to be. Put them a little bit maybe more out to the side. And then your seal is complete. I hope that everyone loves their new Loomigurumi seals. You can always leave me comments on YouTube and Facebook, post pictures of your creations to my Facebook page, and please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on my latest tutorials. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please feel free to subscribe to those as well. Thanks for watching!